All right, so get ready because today we're diving into some pretty wild territory.
Wild's one word for you.
Yeah, right. We're going to be looking at the idea of a god.
A god.
A god of interfacing machines.
Oh, wow.
And I know that might sound a little out there, but
A little bit, yeah.
the source material that we have for this is really fascinating.
It is, yeah.
It's a little bit like we found someone's notes.
Notes?
Yeah, like brainstorming notes or someone's personal notes on this idea. And we're just going to dive in and see what we can uncover.
Sounds good.
So the first thing that I want to point out from these notes is that the author uses this phrase, God of interfacing machines.
Right off the bat.
Right away.
Yeah.
No hesitation.
And it really is striking.
God of interfacing machines, yeah.
And then they also mention this idea of polytheism.
Polytheism.
So for anyone who's not familiar with that word, it means a belief system that has many gods.
A whole pantheon.
Right, exactly. A whole pantheon.
So this God that they're envisioning would be one of many. Yeah, and it really makes you wonder, like, what would this God-specific role be?
Within this larger system.
Within this larger system, right?
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Even in our everyday lives, we're surrounded by this constant interfacing of devices.
Oh, totally.
You know, your phone connecting to your headphones.
Yeah.
Apps talking to each other.
Yeah.
The internet itself.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. It's this incredibly complex web.
Right.
And these notes, they seem to be really wrestling with that idea.
Yeah. So we've got this God of interfacing machines, maybe part of a whole pantheon of tech deities.
Right.
But then there's this question that comes up.
A question.
Yeah, it says God of interfacing did exist beforehand.
Did exist beforehand.
It's phrased as a question.
That's interesting.
Which really throws a wrench into things.
It does. It really makes you think, like, what are they getting at here?
Exactly. What kind of pre-existing concept are they building on?
Right.
When I read that, like, I immediately thought about figures like Prometheus. Yeah. Who, in Greek mythology brought fire to humanity.
Right. That classic story.
And you could argue that fire was like the first transformative technology.
Absolutely.
And so it makes you wonder, is the author drawing on these ancient myths, suggesting this God of interfacing machines isn't a brand new concept, but a reinterpretation of something much older? It's funny you mentioned Prometheus bringing fire.
Yeah.
Because it made me think about how much we rely on GPS today.
GPS.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
We just blindly trust this technology to guide us through unfamiliar territory.
That's true.
It's almost like a modern day
Hermes,
the messenger god.
right, leading us through the digital landscape.
I like that, a digital Hermes.
Yeah, maybe that's a hint at how this God of interfacing machines could manifest in the modern world.
It's a fascinating thought.
Right.
And it really gets to the heart of what's so compelling about this whole idea.
Is this just a fun thought experiment, or are we actually tapping into something deeper about how we view technology?
Oh, I think it's deeper.
I do too.
Yeah.
It's almost like we instinctively reach for these mythological frameworks to try and make sense of this increasingly complex technological world. Like,
right.
We need these stories to help us grapple with these new and powerful forces.
And then there's the ambiguity of the phrase, did exist beforehand.
Did exist beforehand.
So does it mean this God literally existed, like an actual deity from ancient times?
Right.
Or is it more metaphorical, like talking about the underlying concepts that those ancient myths represent?
It's really making me think.
Me too.
So many layers to unpack here.
Right? It's really fascinating.
It is.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a second and recap what we've talked about.
Okay.
We've got this intriguing concept of a God of interfacing machines.
Right.
Maybe existing within a larger system of tech deities.
A digital pantheon.
Exactly. And then this tantalizing question of whether this concept has roots in older myths.
Potentially stretching back to ancient times.
Right.
It really challenges our understanding of what a god can be.
It does. And I think if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really forces us to think about how we perceive technology in our own lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Is it just a tool? Or is there something more profound at play?
Right. Is there a deeper connection between humans and technology?
Yeah. Maybe we're subconsciously looking for ways to understand and even control these forces that increasingly shape our world.
It's like we're trying to find a way to fit technology into our existing frameworks of meaning.
And maybe this idea of a God of interfacing machines is one way to do that.
To bridge that gap between the spiritual and the technological.
Exactly.
It's a really interesting idea.
It is. And it makes you think about, like, On the one hand, we have these very concrete technical aspects of interfacing.
Nuts and bolts of it all.
Right, like APIs, data formats, the constant struggle of getting all these different devices to seamlessly talk to each other.
Right, the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, but then there's this whole other layer.
Other layer.
Of how we relate to technology on a more emotional level.
Even a spiritual level.
Yeah, maybe even a spiritual level, and maybe that's where this God of interfacing machines comes in.
Maybe it's a way to personify those deeper anxieties and hopes that we have about technology.
Right, because technology is so powerful.
It really is.
And it's changing our lives in such profound ways.
And at such a rapid pace.
Yeah, I mean, it can be both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final question to ponder.
A final question?
Yeah, if this God of interfacing machines were to actually exist in our world, what would its rituals and symbols look like?
What would its stories be?
Right. What kind of stories would we tell about this God?
Interesting.
Would we have digital offerings?
Digital offerings, wow.
Yeah, would we offer up our data as some kind of sacrifice?
I mean, we already kind of do that in a way.
That's true, yeah.
It's like we're constantly feeding the algorithm.
And maybe algorithms themselves would be like prayers.
Algorithms as prayers.
Right, these intricate lines of code that we write to try to control and understand the digital world.
That's a powerful image.
It is. It's both fascinating and a little bit unsettling.
It really is.
So, yeah, a lot to think about.
A lot to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the idea of a God of interfacing machines.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep those mental gears turning.
And maybe say a little prayer to the algorithm while you're at it.
Maybe so. All right, until next time.
See you then.